Welcome to the Successful Life Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Barrier, and I am here with my man, Josh Kelly. What's up, Josh?
What's up, man?
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Good to see you too, man. You got a way fancier background than me, though. I'm deeply jealous.
So, it's interesting. I got to give my wife credit. I get more compliments on that background than anything, and she hand-painted that crap.
Did she really?
That's not, like she painted that whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's bizarre. Like, I couldn't have done that if you'd have paid me $40 million.
I'm not sure I could paint this, and it's just a white wall. So,
isn't that the truth? So, Josh, look, for everybody that does not know you, just give us a quick overview of who you are and what you do, brother.
Yeah, I'm a contractor. I'm a contractor by definition. I'm not someone you want to come fix your sink or anything like that. I'd be the worst contractor ever for that. But I play in the HVAC and plumbing space. I have businesses across the United States that I own and operate. Most people know me from my family's business, Parker & Sons. It's the largest, most successful, most profitable company in the United States for HVAC, plumbing, electrical. We'll do $240 million this year. And then I've helped, companies across the United States. If you were to say the top 50 companies in the United States size-wise, I work with about half of them, maybe a little bit more than half, just helping them grow their business, be more profitable, operations, marketing, sales, the whole scheme. I'm kind of like right now at least anyway, I'm kind of in the industry like the high-end, ninja consultant, we'll call it. Don't quote that. That's terrible. No one write that down. But that's what we're saying is just helping companies across the United States. And then we help smaller companies too, but in kind of a different way, a little bit more scalable, obviously.
So I'm just curious, out of all the things that you listed that you help companies with, which part of all those things do you enjoy the most?
I enjoy operations the most because it has the largest impact, right? Like, so a lot of people really think of me because our name, and we screwed this up, is Clover Marketing originally, right? Now we're just Clover. But a lot of people for years think of us as Clover Marketing. And like they put pigeon and soul in this marketing company. Some people think we do digital media. We don't do any of that stuff. And I have no problem. Like I could take companies without a USP, without a strategy, companies that think they know what they're doing. All of a sudden, your cost per acquisition is $30 instead of $200 because you're working with us. And that makes a big difference in their business. But what I found is the best place to start is always making money off the customers you already have. Really maximizing the value, because no matter how cheap a lead I get to you, if you don't do a good job of building a fence around them, making sure no one else gets in, creating a lot of value with that customer and actually making money off that customer, it really doesn't matter. So I like to focus on operations, number one, because I think it's fun. And number two, because I think it's where you can make the biggest difference.
Awesome. I love that you brought up existing customer base. How many, now granted, the people that haven't worked with you, let's talk about the people that haven't worked with you or haven't worked with me. How many companies out there would you say don't reactivate their customer base? They don't touch their customer base. That customer was a new customer and they were excited. And now they're spending money to go find some other random customer when they got this guy right in their backyard, but they're not utilizing.
Let me shift the question slightly, because how many reach out to their customer base? A small percentage, but maybe 5 to 10%. How many do it well?
Like
1%, less. Yeah. And that's really a lot of people don't realize. I tell people there's a group of people, you may know this group of people that already know, like, and trust you and are willing to spend money with you. You know what they're called? Your current customers. Why don't we just get them to use us more often, right? There's three things and three things only. You'll find, I like to speak in really simple terms, because simple, scalable, and I work with scalable businesses, right? There's only three things that will bring in more revenue, and three things only. You cannot get more simplistic than this. It's one, bring in more customers, right? And that's what everyone tends to focus on, right? The second one is make more money from the customers you're already getting. Raise your prices, upsell, cross-sell, whatever that is. And a good percentage of customers do that, right? Almost nobody focuses on the third one, which is get your customers to use you more often. And it sounds so simple, but literally, those are the only 3 ways to make more money, more revenue, not profit. Now, we're not talking about that, but just pure revenue. Everything falls into one of those 3 things without exception. And a third of the option, people don't even pay attention to. It blows my mind.
What was the third option? You cut out when you said it.
So it's more customers, so get new customers, right? Make more money of the customer you already have, and then get your customers to use you more often.
Yes, using you more often. That's the part I missed. Absolutely. That's where maintenance plans come in, right?
Well, not just maintenance plans. There's a lot of ways to do it, right? Like you could be building a long-term nurture. You could be building a fence around customers. You could be asking referrals and follow-up process. You could be delivering value. Certainly maintenance agreements are part of that. But even just cross-selling and bringing things back into your world is super easy to do and surprisingly effective. Even simple like big companies do this. A lot of them don't do it great, but big companies all do sales recovery, right? Small companies don't do any form of sales recovery. It freaking blows my mind. Yeah.
You don't know how real that conversation is for me right now. You just don't know, but real soon, and it's going to be pretty incredible. Huge gap. What you just mentioned, huge gap. So you mentioned, dang it, I knew I should have wrote it down. You mentioned something just a second ago, and I'm like, dang it.
It was brilliant too. It was something,
Yeah, it was. It'll come back to me, whatever it was. So I do think that, look, if you've got a whole customer base that you haven't, here it was. How many times do you recommend, let's say you've got a company that's got 2,000 customers. They've never reactivated the customers. They don't touch the customers. What do you think the best way to start re-engaging with those customers? Is it through a mailer? Is it through email? Is it through all of the things? I'm just curious which way you go, because the second part of that question is, what if they have hit those customers twice a year opposed to never hit them? Because it's a different scenario.
Right. So I'm going to answer this in 2 different ways.
Okay.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget my second thing. So like what lead source do we talk about? Really, I like to move up the value chain and lead source, meaning like what's going to give me the biggest bang of the buck, take the least risk and least cost. So I tend to start with email and then go to text message, then go to ringless voicemail, then direct mail, and then the last thing I'm doing, I'm calling, because each one of those is more expensive than the other, and it's more difficult to be successful at. Like an email, it takes a half hour to build a really good email, but then you send it once, and you can send that to all 2,000 people. You don't want to send it to 2,000 people at a time. You want, if that's your customer base, you don't have that many texts, right? You probably want to send them to 50 or 100 at a time and kind of spread them out. But you move up the value chain. The truth is you have to do all those things. You can skip direct mail. I don't, because a certain percentage of customers are going to reply by email, certain are going to do by text message, certain are going to do by direct mail. And like, I'm trying to capture as many customers as I can, and I eliminate the list each time. So if I have 2,000, I send an email to, let's say I email all 2,000, which I wouldn't do because then I have to make phone calls if it works, right? But I email 2,000, I book 250 calls. Now I got a list of 1,750 to text message. I don't keep text messaging that same group, right? And that's a simple mistake that we all do too. Like, we've all made that mistake. So that's the median I use. But let me pull back, because there's a big piece of that a lot of people mess up because they just have no idea. And is, if you've never reached out to your customer base, you better do it really thoughtfully and carefully. Number one, build value. Don't go straight to the sale, because that's a good way to end up being spammed, right? Number two, like, this is super simple. Like, create a burner email. Like, so many people have no idea what the hell that is. It means, like, if your company is, we'll just call it AC Pros, right? And your website's acpro.com. Don't send an email from josh@acpro.com. Send it from joshacpro.com@gmail.com, that you never intend to use that email again. Bust out those 2,000 emails, knowing a large percent of them they're going to be marked as spam. And whatever's left, that's what I'm going to continue to email, right? But that way, I'm not going to burn my own URL's value.
Yes.
Right? Simple stuff, but like that sucks if you do that the wrong way.
Dude, here's the thing. When people do that, one, they don't realize they've done it. So the stuff that comes after that is that if you don't know you got your email address is burnt, you don't know that all your emails that are going out are going into spam, or they're going into promotion, and it could be who knows how long, because most of us email people that we know, so therefore that's not going to happen to those people, right? If they're if you're locked into their address book or whatever, it may be months before you know, depending on who's handling it and how much attention you're paying to it, right? So you said something important, Josh. You said you better do it quickly. So it's exactly why I asked you that question, because again, if you haven't reached out to those people, they're going to think you're spam if it's been a long time, right? Potentially.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like you want to be as timely as you possibly can. And really there's two sides to this, right? I'm going down like a rabbit hole here, right? But there's the kind of sales recovery and opportunity side, and there's what I would call long-term nurture. Long-term nurture, generally I'm putting people into buckets. So I'm identifying on the front end. For us, we just use 3 buckets because it's simple. It's young, no kids, family, older, no kids, because I'm going to speak to these 3 different groups slightly differently. Not significantly, but enough where it sounds like I'm speaking to them, right? And I'm going to use that to build long-term nurture, where I really provide value more than I make offers. Occasionally I'll make offers, but it's the rarity, right? So a good example of that is like in the middle of summertime, we might here in Phoenix, give a discount ticket to Sunsplash, which is 1 phone call for me, but they get to save $10. I get to get in their inbox to provide value with no disadvantage. But I certainly don't want to send that to a young people, no kids, right? So they might be a music festival to come up, or an art festival, or whatever, right? So you build these kind of custom ones, and you can plan them out ahead of time pretty effectively. You want to be flexible with it, right, when opportunities come up. But that's my long-term nurture, which is like consistently, generally twice a month is what I recommend. If you're not sophisticated, and that sounds like a lot from you, just batch it, man. Just sit down, spend 4 hours, and like plan for the next 3 months. It's not that complicated. That's the long-term nurture side. The other side is the sales recovery or opportunity one, which is, hey, I know all these systems are 10 years old. I'm going to send them an install offer, right? I'm going to put a really compelling story together. We're going to give a reason that's not necessarily because of us. That creates urgency, right? So we can't be blamed. Like they're going to hold on to this forever. We can't do that. It's from our distributor manufacturer. I don't have a choice, right? Or a buyback program, or there's so many cool stuff you can do. And that's more opportunity driven. And that's based not on combination of 2 things. There's immediate sales recovery. Like within the first week, I went out to the install day and say yes, but I want to keep that list for the next 2 years, 5 years, whatever, right? And keep hitting them up. But I use that as, hey, I need install calls. That's why I go after. I need plumbing drain calls. Okay, I have a list of that to go after. So a big piece of this too is like, this doesn't help you if you're not keeping track of opportunities. Meaning like, I don't know who gets a drain call every single year. I don't know if they have an older water heater. I don't know if they have an older AC system. I don't know if they replaced their compressor 2 years ago, or if we talked about an air scrubber for the last 3 visits that we did. If we're not marking that stuff down, it gets really hard to follow up to those opportunity calls or opportunity emails and text messages, and you get it.
100%, dude. And guess what? The other piece to that is that list, dude. That's what people are going to buy when they buy your company. That's really what they're buying. They're not really buying your company. Don't get me wrong. The company comes with it, but the list is the value. That's what they're buying. Your customer list.
That used to be the truth. That's less the truth now. Now it's buying your business, but really it depends on your size too, right? If you're $1 million or $2 million business, yeah, you're buying your list. That's ultimately what it is. They're buying your list. Hey, I realize I could activate, 20% of this list right away. That has a certain dollar amount value to me, so I'm going to pay you that, right? And everything on top of that's gravy. If you're a larger business, like the way we've evaluated businesses, and I've been involved in a lot of sales over the last few years, it's kind of ridiculous. And I'm involved with basically every PE group. Is really based off of like EBITDA and profitability, and the whole industry's kind of shifted, and that's going to get further and further down in the cost of a business. Being like, it used to be the case. It's been the case for a while for $10 million plus businesses, or like 100 million or 50 million plus, right? But it's now starting to trickle down to like the 4 and 5 million, and that will continue, which is good and bad, right? Because if you're highly profitable, that's a good thing. If you're $1 million shop, you can be highly profitable, but you tend not to be, because if you're $1 million shop, if you're highly profitable, you'd be 2 million by next year.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. Sometimes it makes more sense to and you're seeing this a lot. It does make more sense for a lot of these owners just to get out from the hustle and bustle and the stress of having that company underneath them. They make more money sometimes just selling the company and going to work for somebody else.
Yeah, I forget exactly who said it, but this is not a me quote. I can't think of what it is. But the worst, there's 3 options in business. You could succeed, you could fail fast, or you could fail slowly. By far, the worst is failing slowly, right? So I know contractors that come to us, and like legit, we turn around their business, but like they've been in the business 10 years. Last year they made $100,000 in profit, right? And they pay themselves 40 or 50. It's like, man, you've been doing this too long to make that kind of money. Like, you're failing slow. Like, you're one big issue away from going out of business. And like, it's just a shitty life is the honest truth, right? Like, that's not a business. That's a high paying job. If you stop working, you stop making money. That's rough, man. And you can make more. You can go work for someone else, make 150, 200 grand tomorrow, right? Without the stress, without the headaches, without the issues. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they take a lot of pride in being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. But I would tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're $1 million shop and you made 100 grand last year, it's a shit or get off the pot situation, right? Like, you either really focus on your growth and how to grow your business to something substantial where it can sustain itself without you, or you're going to be there your whole life and you're going to look back and be like, I should have worked for someone else this whole time, which is shitty, but it's just the truth.
Well, and part of that is the owner, lots of times the owner they hold the keys. They are the business. And so you get to that end point and you say, I'm exiting the business. Well, you've been holding the business up. There is no business without you. So if you don't come with the business, there is no business.
100%. And that's when, you sell at a discount and, you rely on this big paycheck for your retirement, right? But like, you should have been building your retirement for years. And a business is only sellable if it's an actual business, not a high paying job, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And not to be harsh here, but it's just the honest truth. And this, Corey, like, if a business isn't growing, I would say, 999 times out of 1,000, there's one reason and one reason only, and it's the owner. The person driving or the GM, like, they're comfortable in some way, and that's the reason it's not growing. So it's almost like a decision, like, hey, making 100 grand or 200 grand, honestly, even like 500 grand, once you really dig into this, it's not complicated. It's a choice that I'm not going to accept that anymore, and I'm going to get the help and the learning, and I'm going to visit people, and I'm going to push myself, and that's just no longer acceptable. And the moment you really like take that internally, you will grow just by doing that.
Yeah, 100%. And you said it. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on, you mentioned, and I agree with this, the owners 9 times out of 10 the chokehold, and it could be that the owners has too much control, or they just don't. They're scared. A lot of people are scared, and I get that. I've been right there, and you got a lot to be scared about. But you do have to depend on other people when you don't have answers. And here was the real question: it is usually the owner. Is it the owner, in your opinion, keeping that GM there that's really not doing anything? We've all seen it, or is it the actual owner holding it back? Is it the GM plus the owner, or is it just the owner, in your opinion? I should say right-hand man. Let me rephrase that. Whoever their right-hand man is has been there since day one. You get it.
I get it. overwhelmingly it's the owner. It can be that right-hand man, but like if the owner's really doing his job, then he knows that. And he's either fixing it or moving away from that person, right? You don't have to always let him go. Sometimes you can train it out of it or whatever, right? But it's overwhelmingly the person in charge. And it's not necessarily fear, too. Like, there's certainly people who play scared, right? And when you play scared, you don't play as well. And we all know that. And it's not just a business thing. It's a sports, it's a life, it's an everything, right? But it's more comfort level, right? This is what I'm comfortable with. And I know what this looks like. And because of that, I don't push significantly harder or don't try new things or don't go outside the box or don't put myself in situations where I'm the dumbest guy in the room, which is the ideal place to be, right? So because I'm comfortable enough where I'm at, because if you were to ask any business owner, like I've never had ever anyone say like, no, I don't want to make more money, right? Everybody wants to grow. They're just not willing to do the work that it takes to do it. Right? Wanting to grow means shit, right? You have to take the action to do it too, right? Which is not complicated. Like this is like a really dick comment, but it's just the truth. Like I know a lot of business owners in this industry, and some of them, most of them are incredibly successful. Like we're in an industry where someone like that doesn't do well makes 200 grand a year. You know what I mean? Which is unbelievable compared to other businesses, right? And I know people who make millions of dollars a year. And I'm surprised they could tie their shoelaces. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take a genius to be really successful in this business. You just have to be good at one or two things. And when I say good at one or two things, I mean really good at one or two things. And it doesn't have to be the same thing. Some companies are just badass at marketing. Some companies are really good at sales. Some companies are really good at recruiting. Some companies are really good at building culture and creating experience, right? And if you have just one of those, you could easily be a $10 million business. Like easy, not complicated, not difficult. So if you're sitting here listening and saying like, hey, I don't have any of those things, like what are you best at? Why don't we focus on that? Right? And just do the work, right? Get that coach, get that helper, go visit those businesses. Go visit a $50 million business that will let you in, that you really admire, that is really good at recruiting, which is what you want to focus on, right? Because they're out there. And they're willing to talk if you come with with some humility and ask for help. Everybody likes their ego built, and you can grow your business really quickly. Like I look at some of these businesses that come to us, and we tend not to work with real small businesses. If you're like, you are the guy, it's a one tech shop, like I could help you, but it's just not. I'm not probably the best at doing that. If we're just being totally honest, right? I'm more about training GMs and owners, but like. I look at some of these businesses and sometimes like they'll really pitch me and they'll give me like a story and they really want the help. And it's like, all right, if you're working with me, you're doing 1 million this year. Next year, you're doing 3.5. Like, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, if you're not willing to do 3.5, then we're not working together. Right.
But here, one point that I think is super important. So when you figure out whatever that thing is that you're good at, and I was going to mention this earlier. One thing that I noticed that very few people in this space do, unless you're at a really high level, which is collaboration. So if you figure out you're really good at that one thing, you've got to figure out other people around you that are smarter than you in those other areas, right? You have to.
Yeah, for sure. Like, man, up to a certain size, you can do it all. Like I know companies that do 4, 5 million, 6 million, where really that owner is the bottle cap. He's involved in every single decision. And to be clear, by anyone's definition, that's a successful business, right? You're doing 6 million, you're doing 15%. You're making close to $1 million, maybe making over $1 million in profit a year. It's hard to argue that's not successful, right? But what I would tell you is that's not a business. That's still a high-paying job. Because if you leave, business leaves. Or you get an accident or whatever, right? So moving to that next level where you really have a management team and you're delegating and you're not necessarily doing all the work, but you're helping people grow and do the work for you, that's when it gets really exciting. Because like I would say the biggest jump is that, $6 to $10 million range, because people try not to let go of the reins, and you have to. But once you hit that $10 million range, I can tell you right now, because I've done it, I don't know how many times, maybe 30 times, right? 10 to 50 is not that hard. 10 to 100 is not that hard. Once you get to 100, it gets, there's a lot of sophistication that comes after that.
Well, but between 10 and 100, you're more or less it's repeatable processes, right? That's what makes it
you're just expanding. You're just expanding, and you're expanding your team. And you have to go to like a different reporting structure. Most of them are going to like the military reporting model where there's, team leads to supervisors to managers. But you're really rinsing, repeating up until a point. And then at a certain size, you really got to focus on automation because it's just, you can't, just data input. If you're using someone in the United States instead of overseas or a software to do data input, like this could drain your life away. Like the most basic stuff, like, we're in Home Depots and Costco's, and it's like, you got to fill out these forms afterwards. And we used to pay people in America to do that. And it was like, holy shit, we have 5 full-time people doing Home Depot and Costco forms. That's ridiculous. like, why? Why are we doing this? Now we have a software, which is probably more complicated we need, but a stepping stone was we got some VAs, overseas that did it for, $5 an hour that had college degrees. It was data input. Who cares? What I mean? It's not a big deal, but yeah, it gets to a point really from 10 plus, you're just scaling the systems that you already did. And the only cap is your comfort level. It's the same thing. Most businesses slow down because, hey, I made $4 million last year. That's enough for me. That's why, like in general, I've helped so many companies get so big is because just because you're comfortable doesn't mean I'm going to let you be comfortable. Which is kind of a hard conversation. I have to handpick people that I work with one-on-one, right? Because, you might see, 15 million as the goal. I'm not going to stop until we hit 50. Or what you told me when we first talked, right? Because it's your business, it's not mine. But yeah, it's interesting, man. The dynamic of it, it's not complicated. It really isn't.
Well, I think, what you're saying too is like, that's why they're hiring you, is to push them, right? If they could push themselves, they wouldn't have to hire you.
Well, yeah, pushing is a big piece of it, but really it's just, experience too. Like you don't know what you don't know. And
that's true.
It's not like a lot of business owners that hire me, like these are guys that are going to grow anyway. I'm just shortening the length and lowering the risk. Because I've done it so many times, and I got the systems, I got the processes, I know how to set up the automation, I know how to build managers. I've done it so many times, and it's not just like my ideas. Like, make no mistake, the reason I'm good is because I've visited so many companies and high-level operators. I probably have been close to 1,000 businesses by now, which is ridiculous when you really think about it, right? It's a shit ton. I'm going this weekend, and I go next week, and like it's, I go to teach, but I also learn, man, and that's why I'm good. So it's a combination of holding them accountable and really just having proven playbooks from across the United States with different companies, different personalities, different cultures. It goes a long way in lowering the risk and speeding up accelerating the growth.
For sure.
And profitability, because a lot of people talk about growth and revenue, but who gives a shit about revenue when it comes down to it? All that matters is profit.
That's 100% correct. All right, so you mentioned automation, so I'm going to ask you. I didn't really expect to ask you this necessarily, but what are you seeing in terms of automation from consumer, let's just say, to an HVAC company? Like, what are you seeing in terms of making the customer experience easier through automation?
So there's a bunch of stuff where a few select people are really pushing right now. So like selling systems online and upfront pricing online, right? Which is something we'll eventually be forced to do. That's just the truth, right? Customer expectations have shifted. Setting up and scheduling online, and like some people take it directly into their CRM or their field management system, like ServiceTitan just bought Schedule Engine, right? And going through the whole process. It's people are leaning into this, but the vast majority of contractors aren't leaning fully in. Now, what I would say is the first adapters rarely are the winners.
Agreed.
It's the early adapters, but not the first adapters, right? So I'm of the opinion, like at some point, yeah, we are all going to have to put pricing and systems online. It's going to happen. I guarantee it, right? I believe so firmly. I would bet money against it. Does that have to be next year? No, but we can put ranges, right? Because we got to answer, like, we can't avoid that question, right? Like, so many contractors were taught, like, how much does it cost to get a new system? And they give, like, they're on the phone, they go, well, it all depends on what you need, what's going on. Like, we don't know exactly what's in your attic, what type of system you have, the size, is the furnace, is gas. I can ask you a million questions, but the truth is, I'm not even a technician, right? So I can't give you good answers, right? And we've all been taught to give this answer. And I'm not against that answer, but it's most of the time customers get, no, I get that, but like, give me a range.
Right.
And then a CSR will be like, well, I can't because this. And if I say a number, right, and you're just dancing around it, and that's bullshit. It's a terrible experience, right? Just give them a number, but don't give them 15 to 20,000. Say for most customers, it's anywhere between $3 to $4 a day. That's it. Price of a cup of coffee, not even Starbucks coffee. I'm talking like Dunkin' Donuts tough coffee, right? Which, by the way, $3 to $4 a day is $15,000. Just so we're on the same page, right? But people don't do the math. So there are some things that we're all moving towards, but you don't have to do it right now. You just have to be half measures. So that $3 to $4 a day is a half measure that totally alleviates the customer concern, gets you out there 99 times out of 100, and then it gives you the opportunity to actually give a real pitch, right? Same thing like with the scheduling online. Like, I'm a big fan of having a text system where you can text and schedule online, where you can schedule directly on the website. But to be clear, like, some people go straight into their field management system and it's just on the board. I don't do that because I can't ask the questions I would want to ask, build the value of what I want to build, and I can't cross-sell on an online chat.
Right.
I can do all that on the phone. So set it up so they do an online chat, you call them 10 minutes later. Confirm it. Hey, I have a few questions. Here's the details. You didn't say how old the system is. You know approximately how old. Like, that's a really hard. It's either they know it or they don't know it. But on the phone, I can figure out, well, how long you live in the house? You ever replaced an AC unit before? Oh, we've been here 8 years. We never replaced before. Well, it's at least 8 years old then, right? This gives me some information, right? That I can't do over a chat, and I can't cross-sell. I can't sell an agreement. I can't get out there for a plumbing call too. Like, I can't do all the things I would want to do. So I make that online chat as simple as possible, knowing I'm going to call them anyway. It's one of those, like, I mean, it sounds bad to say it's a half measure, but it's a half measure, right? I'm appeasing the customer, giving them what they want, but I'm still setting it up where I'm successful in it. Whereas probably 5 years from now, there will be some customers who will get pissed off if we call. It's not happening now, but there will be a time where they will, right? And then we'll have to adjust. Until then, don't worry about it. Just set up an online portal and then call.
Yes. 100%.
Does that help answer your question? I feel like that's
great answer.
40 minutes of me just rambling.
No, great answer. So what happens when, let's just take one of your companies and that chat comes in at 9 p.m. What happens?
Well, I mean, if you're a badass, you're answering at 9 p.m.
I agree. We know
if you're a small company, that's probably not realistic, right? So you call first thing in the morning. You're going to confirm automatically with an email, letting them know that you're on the schedule. You're probably going to send them an automated text message, which, by the way, is super easy to do, saying, hey, we got you. You're going to be on this call for tomorrow, but we will give you a call first thing in the morning just to go over everything, give them the details. That way they know the call's coming, but they feel comfortable that what you don't want to do is just a thank you page when they click the submit button and they're like, well, did they book the call or not? Right? So you want to send them an email, but the truth is a lot of people don't check email fast enough, especially late at night where they're watching that. But text messages they do, right? So you text them right away, and that kind of gives you the space to call in the morning.
You know something? I'll tell you an experience that I thought was unreal. That I had. It was probably about a month ago. I had to do something with Verizon, and just like everybody, I'm busy. Like, I don't have time to sit on the phone with them. I just don't. And so they have a text feature that I could, and here's what I loved about it. I could come back to that conversation whenever I felt like it, and somebody would answer. Like, it could be 3 hours, 6 hours. It didn't make any difference. Now, I don't know who was on the other end, nor do I care because they were answering my questions, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. So I haven't experienced anything like that at any other company. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Yeah, of course. It's just a rotary line. So like what they're doing is, if you've been dead for 15 minutes, it goes into the main pool, and then as soon as you text, it comes right back up. And they're just keeping an email chain or a text chain, which makes it easier for them because they don't like, you may see if you close that window down, it may delete the rest, right?
No,
They don't. I kept it. Yeah,
no, it keeps it no matter what.
They're keeping their chat form on there too, because like a lot of people don't realize, like if you go to certain chats, like when you leave and you come back, it's like it started over fresh. But that's not what they're seeing on their end.
Right.
They're seeing every conversation you ever had, right? And it's chronological. So like, oh, here was the problem we had last week. Like now I'm aware of it, just like we would do with our own customers, right?
Sure.
And if you're doing this right, this is all in your CRM or your field management system, wherever you're using, right? So yeah, I mean, they have that capability, and that's like that's a button to turn on for most companies. It's super easy.
I mean, it's like, I mean, I guess I've never had anybody else. I've never had anybody else have that feature where I could come back to it. I was mind blown. And if people can have the access to it, why the hell are they not using it?
I mean, really, it's.
Think about how we communicate.
After like 30 days or something, like where it removes it. But yeah, I mean, there's no disadvantage to having it. It's just, some people don't think to turn things on. Like, it's surprising how often people like they buy stuff and they use stuff, especially software, and they never even really research its real capabilities. They're using like 10% of what they would want to use if they just knew.
I am a victim of that. I promise you. I promise you.
We all are. Some worse than others, right?
Yeah. It makes me furious when I figure out that I've been spending 45 minutes on this thing and I could have just clicked a button that I didn't know about. Oh my goodness. So, in terms of like, do you see this thing completely? Do you ever see a day where it's an Uber, right? Taxi cab drivers years ago would never imagine a random dude could get this car and drive people around. I'm starting to think that, I feel like home services are changing and going into more of that direction. And I don't know how much they're changing right this second, but I do believe that is coming way quicker than people think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a little bit more experienced with this than most people. So, part of my background, after Parker, I had a software business. I mean, it's still, HVAC businesses the whole time, right? But I had a software business. I ended up getting into a company called Pulse, based out of San Francisco. It was a VC-backed software business that was really trying to Uberize home services, and they were really focusing on appliance repair first. They did TVs and phones before that, and they were moving into plumbing and HVAC, and like help them raise a shit ton of ridiculous amount of money and just kind of different aspect of it. And it was a very cool experience. Like I ran the sales, and I ended up running recruiting and retention, and I ended up running business development all within a year. It was just fucking insane. But I was in San Francisco every week. It was a tough life, but great experience. And their whole thing was Uberizing home services. And they did a pretty good job of it, to be perfectly clear, right? Like they were turning a lot of money, and bringing on a lot of techs. Like when I took over recruiting, we went from recruiting like 2 to 3 people a week to 12 to 15 a day, every single day. Yeah, fucking crazy. I gave that's one of my like weird, like proud moments in business, right? Because I'm like, hey, Josh, like we're having a lot of recruiting problems. Like it's affecting sales, affecting this. Can you take over recruiting? I'm like, yeah, no, I can handle that. I can take over recruiting. It's like perfect, because we already told them the meeting starts in 2 minutes. I'm like, oh shit, okay, I'll go figure it out, I guess, right? I just sat there and asked questions, and we came up with a whole plan for the next like 90 days, and went from 2 a week to 15 a day. But anyway, so I think Uberizing the home services is coming, but not the same way as Uber. Because here's the big difference. A driver is a fairly low skill drive. And I'm not knocking anybody or pushing anything back, but like lots of people could drive for Uber. To be a technician, quality control is much more important, right? So what we found in Pulse is we always had an issue with quality control. Like it was a constant battle. We were trying to follow up all the time. So I don't know if it'll ever be like a huge part of the industry where it's I'm a single technician, I turn my app on, I do jobs, I turn it off, right? There's all kinds of problems with that, from side jobs to, but the biggest one was quality control, right? Like you have very little ability to make sure they did a great job, and then the warranty and the follow up is on you, not on them, because you're in this case Pulse, right? So what I think they'll end up doing, and I don't know how far in the future is, but it's not that far. There'll be major players in the space, like Google and Amazon, Apple. They're all developing this right now, and they're gonna like really sell the leads, create the experience, but they're not gonna work with one-off techs. In fact, they're not gonna work with mom and pops or chucking the trucks. What they're gonna do is they're gonna go into Phoenix, and they're gonna say, hey, we want 3 partners that can handle our entire volume, that we know the quality control is good, that we have a large amount of influence over, and we know we're not going to have issues with. They're going to stand behind the work. So we're going to work with Parker and Sons and this company and this company and this company. These are the 4 we're going to work with, 3 or 4, maybe 5, whatever it is. But it's never going to be like right now where Google really recommends hundreds of companies. So that's going to happen, and that will be like Uberizing to a point, but it'll be with specific people. Now, if you're smart and you're aware of this, like you could set yourself up for success in this. This is not a bad thing. This will be great for the industry. But if you're unprepared for it, yeah, it's going to suck. So start preparing for it. And there's ways to do that. And if you wanted to have a conversation on how to set yourself up for that, it's not tomorrow. So it's not something you have to panic about. But it could be 2 years from now. It could be 3 years from now. It could be next year. I don't know. They're definitely spending a lot of money to try to do it. So do I think it's coming in a modified way? For sure. Google's already doing this. It used to be driven over PPC where literally anyone could do it, right? Now most of it's LSA, right, where it's a Google recommended company, so they drastically decreased the number of people that could do it. It's going to get shorter and shorter because ultimately if Google sends you someone and they do a shitty job, that reflects poorly on Google. They don't want that, right? So it's just going to move more and more that way as we go.
Well, I think that has eliminated the being Google verified. Yeah, that's really eliminated a lot of chucking a truck. It's eliminated a lot of people that didn't have their shit together, right? I mean, because there's criteria, or at least there used to be. I haven't looked into it recently, but there used to be criteria of branding, right? You had to have a shingle. You couldn't have just a mailbox, or maybe you could, but you get my point. You had to have.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and it's significantly more difficult to be qualified. And think about it this way too, right? Like a lot of people think Google is this evil empire, right? And there may be some truth to it. But like when they switched to LSA, they took a big pay cut. There was those chucking trucks that would pay $200 for that lead. Now, big, smart, successful companies didn't do that, right? Which was the majority of the buyers. But they still had a lot of people who pay $200 for a lead because they didn't know what the fuck they're doing, right? Yeah. Now, it's kind of set pricing. And it's not set like it used to be, but really it's like between $35 and $40 for a service call. Like that's way less than what they used to, right? Yeah. Way less. So Google does make decisions like if we could provide better service, we're okay with not making as much money, which should scare the crap out of people who like, oh, I'm not Google certified. Number one, go get Google certified. Number two, like understand there's something else coming down the pipeline that would limit this even further, right? Which if you're set up for it, good, less competition. If you're not set up for it, get set up for it.
Yeah, or pay the consequences.
I mean, there'll always be business like the small guys are never going to go away, right? But how they do business will significantly have to shift. Well,
in reality is they'll have a better business if they do move forward and just join this thing. Yeah. Like you're going to be more successful. It's really not rocket science.
No, it's not. It's not complicated. It really isn't. And the things that Google asks you to do to be certified, like you should do already, right? Right, and like so many people could be Google certified, but they're like they just didn't take the time or effort to do it because they just don't know enough about it. That's craziness. Anyway,
You're right. And now, you get busy and there's just not time in the day to do, if you're at that $1 million, you're running around like a chicken, with the chicken with its head cut off. And that, it is what it is, but it's fascinating. The automated stuff's fascinating. I think it's interesting. Like, and I know I've kind of beat this to a little bit of a dead horse, but if you think about how people communicate, right? If you think about, I'm 44 years old. To be completely transparent, if I never had to pick up the phone and call anybody ever, and I'm a sales guy, like that's not even, it sounds weird for me to even say that, but like, I just don't care to talk to anybody on the phone. If I can do it as quickly online, I will. Right. I will. And
yeah, and I mean, there's this shift based off your demographic. The younger you are, the more likely you are to be that way. But there's certainly exceptions at every age demographic, right? But like I don't go to the grocery store. Like I got everything delivered. Like my whole life shifted, and I think COVID kind of, for a lot of people, sped up this process, accelerated it quite a bit because they would never think of having a groceries ordered. Now the majority of people get their groceries ordered, right? And it's going to continue to go that way. Like, if it's easier and simpler, which by the way, it is easier and simpler than getting on the phone to do a text message or do an online chat, then people will. Not everyone, but it's like one of those things. If 5% of customers wanted to text message to book calls, is that enough people to pay for a text platform? Hell yes, it is. It's not even comparable. You know what I mean? Like text platforms are usually, tens of dollars a month. How many calls do you need to convert to make that make sense for you? Right? Maybe you would have gotten some of those anyway, but some of them you wouldn't.
Well, it's also key to know that 5%, right? And that's why I went my head with left and right, because I thought, well, you wouldn't. Right. You got to know the 5% you're sending the text messages to as well, because those other 95% of the people that didn't answer the first or second time, they probably don't want to get that from you. Right.
You'd be surprised. Like, people are more open to text messaging now. Let me pull that back. If you do a good job at it, people are open to text messaging. Like I don't know, like Arizona is like a swing state. So like I got so many political text messages this last election. It was insane, obnoxious, annoying. Don't be that guy, right? But if you make it personal, it's from a friend, right? You're using first name, you're using simple wording. You do a good job of building experience with that text message, then people don't mind it. But it's no different than an email, right? Like people really don't know how to do emails. Like they have this beautiful template where it's branded and like they're so proud of how it looks. And then I look at it as like, well, this is clearly a fucking ad.
Yeah.
They should just say, hey, Josh, comma. I was looking at your shirt, like, you know what I mean? It should be written like you would write an email to a friend, because that shit gets opened and that shit gets read. Your beautiful newsletter with, holiday information and like Christmas lights on there and, the fun fact about Christmas trees, like that shit doesn't get read. No. Employees don't do it. Right. Your own employees don't do it. Why would you expect a customer to?
Right. You don't open them, right? When you see that email, you're not going to open it. So why would you expect your people to open it?
Nope. I don't know.
Sometimes it's just the easy way, maybe, but at the same time, I think it's just bad advice lots of times, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, they've been taught like, hey, you've got to look real professional. To be clear, some businesses are built like their USP is how professional they are, and that's different. Most USPs aren't that. Like USP is your unique selling position, like the YU. Right. Professional is a way of, saying quality, but there's better ways of saying quality pretty significantly.
So it's sort of like, and this is how I approach it. It's kind of consultative selling. It's not kind of, it is exactly what it is, right? You provide a value and you don't ask for anything. And eventually, guess what? You do that enough times, people are going to want to do business with you.
Yeah. It's not that one-on-one sales call where you're in the house where I'm trying to get the sale right then and there, right? This is an email, which even though it's going to look really personal and feel really personal, it's not. I'm using merge fields. It's all auto-filled. It's like I'm sending 1,000 of them at a time, right? It's not easy. It's not hard to do, right? So it's different than that one-on-one sales call. Like you can't put pressure on people with an email. Not only does it not work, like it's almost physically impossible to do. So don't try. So it like you could get real complicated. And like what we've really been talking about almost this whole time is activating our customer base, right? And that's such a small piece of it, but it's a piece that a lot of people miss. But like, let's do this. I'm gonna give away something for free. Is that cool, Corey?
Love that.
Wow. Anybody who wants some information on this, just email info@growwithclover.com and put this podcast, and we'll give you a free course on how to activate your customer base. We'll go like step by step through it and how to make sure like exactly how to reach out, what's effective, what's not effective, what cadence you should do, what time you should send the messages, how to build a good title that actually gets open, how to build a good offer, and then like how to consistently follow up without pissing people off.
Dude, I'll be honest. That's probably the best thing that you could have ever given away on this podcast. I'm serious because there's
that I get $100,000 cash. Which one's better?
Right. Which one you want, right? And I guarantee if you take the first one, you'll make way more than that if you just implement the things, right?
Oh, over time, for sure. If you're a big business, absolutely, within a week, right? If you're a smaller business, over time, there's no doubt.
For sure. Josh, where can they find you, brother?
Just go to growwithclover.com. Honestly, if you want to shoot me an email, I'm not the best at answering emails real fast. Corey can attest to that. But it's just josh@growwithclover.com. Check us out on our website. If you need help with anything, reach out. We're happy to help.
Appreciate you, Josh. It's been a great conversation, my man.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, brother.